Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. Today is the last session of the MENA certificate program, jointly organized by the Youth Diplomacy Forum and ORSAM, Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Today we are going to discuss and talk about the Arab-Israel conflict or Israel-Palestine conflict. So we are joined here with the fourth world chairman of International Human Rights Commission, Ambassador Dr. Shahid Amin. He also served as advisor to the former Prime Minister of Pakistan and the former Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau as well. So a very warm welcome to Ambassador Shahid Amin Khan. I hope I am audible, sir. Over to you.
क्या बात है
Yes, sir, you can continue. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, President Youth Diplomacy Forum and Sam for inviting me on the very important topic of the Arab world, not only on the Arab world but the Islamic world. Israel and Palestinian conflict history is not so short. It started from 1947 to onward, when the United Kingdom and all the Allied forces who conquered and was a winning position into the Second World War brings the Jews community to settle into the land of Palestine, and that Jews community, the Jews refugees, they bought the land from the Palestinian to settle them as in refugees on the Holy Land of Palestine. Afterwards, the world knows that the United Kingdom and its allies provided them the weapons. They armed the Jewish community, and the Jewish community forcibly displaced the Palestinian from the land of Palestine, which belongs to them. Uh, there are pros and cons in the history. There are some mistakes has been done by the Arab community, especially the Palestinian, on that time, which also resulted that the international community on that time, which was formed the League of Nations and then the United Nations, uh, quickly recognized the alienable force, which is the independence and freedom of the Jewish state on the land of Palestine. So it started from there until now. There was three wars been fought between the Arab and Israel, and Arabs lose every war because of their uh, inability, because of their Western interest, and also I must say that the unity, which is a lack of all wars, in all wars, the unity amongst the Arab states and nations for the liberation of Al-Quds al-Sharif and to liberate the state of Palestine. So this is the short story of a conflict between the Israel and Palestinian. There have been many accords, negotiation from 1948 onwards, uh, which one was successful during the time of a President Abu Ammar Yasser Arafat, that was called the Oslo Accord, and today whatever the Palestinian Authority is there, it is just because of the that accord which succeeded because of the pressure of the international community and as well as, yes, the willingness of President Arafat being as a Palestinian leader. There are many questions that why the Palestinian leader Arafat accepted the Oslo Accord formula while in 1972 the Israel was ready to give them the bigger portion of Palestine rather than what they have succeeded into the Oslo Accord. I was the one who raised the question before the President Arafat, and President Arafat responded me very bluntly. "Okay, look, I don't know how much life remaining in my hand, but I know if I died, then there will be nothing in the head of the peoples of Palestine. So I am forced because of my life, and I am forced that I cannot fight much more to accept this accord, to at least have a homeland, a piece of our land belongs to the peoples of Palestine." So this is what is the uniqueness into the Israel and Palestinian conflict. Now, if we will come over the why the Israelis are so powerful, it is because of the international community. And why the Palestinians are so weak? It's because of the Islamic countries and their disunity, their interest, which are very unique with the Western part, and so the Islamic countries are not united on a one platform, on a one question. They are united. They are united that the Al-Quds al-Sharif is an integral part of Palestine. They are united that it should be liberated, but they are not united to how it should be liberated and how it should be. The Holy Land belongs to the peoples of Palestine. For that reason, from the 75 years to onwards, this is the unresolved conflict or a question before the international community on the platform of the Security Council, on the platform of the UN General Assembly, and as well as if we will seek that how the Muslim countries are addressing this. Let's see the Organization of Islamic Conference, Arab League. The preamble of the Islamic Conference (OIC) is saying that the headquarter of the OIC will be shifted in Jeddah, in Jerusalem, when Al-Quds al-Sharif will be liberated. Until now, it will be remain in Jeddah. So on, we will go on to the Arab League. Arab Leagues having its own agenda of the on the basis of race, on the basis of one community, not on the basis of the they are the Muslim Ummah. So OIC representing Muslim Ummah and Arab Leagues is representing the peoples of the Arab world. So the both are having the different means and opinion, and nobody is succeeded during the 75 years, nor on the international forums, or not even between themselves. So this is, when we blame the Western part, we should also know that what is the pros and cons, what is the faults within the Islamic world itself. That the Palestine is still facing the oppression of an Israeli state, and I am, in my opinion, in my view, that if there is no option left for the peoples of Palestine that they should fight themselves as they are fighting from the last 75 years. The world should realize that it should not be a bloody fight, and it should not be a the fight like other independent movement of the freedom movement, which was bloody and like that the international community failed and then they surrendered in front of them. So it is a time that the Muslim community Ummah should sit together and think about the question that how the Palestinian will get the freedom, how the Palestinian get the right of a statehood, how the Palestinian will be also prosperous like the other nations. This is the most important question before the Muslim Ummah, and the same like to the Arab world. Basically, the Arab world's ignorance is a more important than the other countries. It is the Arab land, belongs to the Arab peoples, and if the Arab people and Arab they cannot protect their own motherland and their own holy land, then who will protect it? Then the questions comes on the Muslim Ummah. Muslim Ummah says that it's a holy land. It's a land which belongs to them. But what is their reaction and what is their actions towards liberating them? Nothing. They are not even united on the international forums. So let the Palestinians should, it's my own opinion, that they should consider that they are standalone and they should consider how to talk with the state of Israel and or to the international community. This is the only way that might be this question will be resolved. Otherwise, I am not looking that in the coming years, might be in my life, this question will be resolved, and might be in another generation will face the same question in front of them. So this is the short story, and this is the basic points behind the conflict between the Israel and Palestinian. I must say that the people should learn from the history. People should learn from the mistakes. The people must learn from and especially the nation must learn from the mistake they made in past, and they should not repeat it for in present and the future. Israel is in reality at this moment, and the whole international community stand behind the Israel. Few countries they wise for the peoples of Palestine, but their action are against the wise what they wise for the peoples of Palestine. Action matters, not the words matter. So this double standard is also played by the international community toward the atrocities happening on the land of Palestine with the peoples of Palestine. And the condemnation is widely happening whenever some incident come in front of the international community just stand in solidarity with the peoples of Palestine, condemn that incident, but when the matter comes, they do nothing. They just pass the resolution and the statements. So who will be the responsible? The Islamic Ummah, Islamic countries are responsible of the suffering of the peoples of Palestine, none other than the Islamic countries. This blames and this accusation is on the shoulder of the Islamic countries. And we should understand that this is the only solution. If the Islamic countries are united, might be the Israel will listen to the demands of the peoples of Palestine. Otherwise, the international community, so I will say, forget it. International community has nothing to do with this option or with this suffering of a people of Palestine. As I will say, the people, the suffering of people of Kashmir, international community has nothing to do with it. If the peoples of Sahara, Western Sahara, international community at don't bother uh, the suffering of the peoples of Western Sahara. If you will see that how the peoples are suffering from the poverty in Africa, forget it, because it's none of the business of the international community. If the peoples of Latin America are suffering from the diseases, from the poverty, from the flood, from the climate, forget it. The international community, the so-called international community, just look toward their interests. Nothing. They are serious how the peoples are dying and how the peoples are suffering. So, if you want that the international community to react, then unity is the base of that reaction. Unity can bring that reaction quickly, because the international community will never go against their interest. So look at the double standard of the international community, especially the Western countries, that while the Russia is an oppressor in Ukraine, uh, I was looking toward the chart that how many countries has supported by the weapons to Ukrainian government and the peoples to fight with the Russia. It is in billions, but they cannot give the weapon to the peoples of Kashmir and to the peoples of Palestine to fight for the right of a self-determination. So it's very clear. So if you are looking towards that the international community will resolve this issue, they never resolve in 75 years, and they will not resolve it uh, in next 75 years. It is my take. I am available to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shahid Amin Khan, for your wonderful talk about the Arab-Israel conflict. We will take questions after that, and I am going to discuss a little bit about just give my opinion about the Arab-Israel war, and specifically about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As you already said, that after Second World War in 1947. The state of Israel was created by the great powers, and the UN also adopted a resolution. I think you better know about it. The resolution 181, that is also known as the partition plan, that sought to divide, the British mandate of Palestine into two states, Arab state and a Jewish state. But we have seen after 1 year, in 1948, the state of Israel was created, but Arab-Israel war started, and that war lasted for 2 years till 1949, and Israel won that war. So what happened? Almost 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and the territory was divided into three parts and captured by Israel. The territory was divided into the state of Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. And we have seen the tensions are arising over the following years in the region, particularly between Egypt and Israel, Jordan and Israel, Syria and Israel. Then we have seen in 1956 the Suez Crisis. So Israel's invasion of Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, signed a mutual defense pact in the anticipation of a possible, you know, uh, you can say that the response to Israel, and that was done by President Abdul Jamal Nasser of Egypt. And he, but what happened? Israel preemptly, attacked the Egyptian and Syrian forces, especially the air forces of Egypt and Syria. So that 6 day war, again, Arab states were defeated, as you told in a very detail. So Israel, gained territorial control over the Gaza Strip, over the Sinai Peninsula. Then
They started capturing other, Palestinian lands, especially the Golan Heights, that are very important strategically and located in Syria. Then what happened after, 6 years? Yom Kippur War in October. This is also called as October War between Egypt and Syria. So Egypt, Syria, and Israel. So what happened in October War? Egypt and Syria again launched an attack on Israel to regain the lost territory. But this doesn't, resulted the significant gains. They couldn't regain those lands. Again, Israel won that war and captured the other, you can say territories or cities of Palestine. So this is going on from 1947, 49 onwards. Then again, a ceasefire happened. This happened many times. A war is going on. A war has started between Arab countries and Israel. Then a ceasefire. Then again, war is starting. So there are many wars fought between Arab countries and Israel. Arab-Israel War 1, 2, 3. Consequently in consecutively in many years. But finally, in 1979, we have seen a ceasefire and peace negotiations. A series of ceasefire and peace negotiations. The representatives from Egypt and Israel signed the Camp David Accord. And Excellency Shahid Amin also discussed about the Oslo peace process or Oslo Peace Accord. So this Camp David Accord was signed in 1979 to bring peace and stability in the region. But what happened? That accord also failed because the question of Palestinian self-determination, self-governance remains unresolved. As Ambassador Shahid Amin said, that Palestinians will decide what to do, how to do, which territory they are going to take. And I mean, this is now things are very much worse than before. Then in 1993, Oslo I Accords mediated the conflict. They set up a framework for the Palestinians to govern themselves in the two areas or two territories, West Bank and Gaza. So, they are also very important areas for Palestine as well, and enabled mutual recognition, of the Palestinian Authority and Israeli government. Then after 2 years, in 1995, Oslo II Accords, expanded on the first agreement. So what happened? It said that a complete withdrawal of Israel from 6 cities of Palestine and 450 towns in the West Bank. Then all going on, all good going on. But what happened in 2000? That Sharon's, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, I think. So he visited Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Al-Aqsa Mosque is, the third holiest site in Islam or for Muslims. Palestinian launched, the second Intifada, you can say, a war, attack, battle, or something like that. I don't exactly know what it was that, but in response, what happened? The Israeli government approved the construction of barrier wall. So, we have seen that there is a wall on the Gaza Strip. So it was built in 2005. So before 2005, there was no wall. So that is why we say Israel is an apartheid state. That is why we say, because in 2005 onwards, they started building a wall in the area of West Bank. Then this all going on, International Court of Justice, International Human Rights, and all that, they condemned this, but nothing happened because the great powers and US was on the side of Israel. Then comes to 2013. UN again started to revive the peace process between the Israeli government and Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. However, peace talks were disrupted, definitely when, the Palestinian ruling party that time, Fatah, they formed a unity government with its rival Hamas. So, Hamas is, you can say, a spin-off of Egypt Muslim Brotherhood. And Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1987, following the first, Intifada, one of the, two major Palestinian political parties, and was designated a foreign terrorist organization by the US in 1997. So in 2014, clashes again started between Israelis and Palestinians, and confrontation started between the paramilitary forces, Israeli military, and Hamas. So what they did, Hamas fired, according to a report, they fired nearly 3,000 rockets on Israel, and Israel retaliated with a major offensive in Gaza. Then the skirmishes lasted for many times and ended in 2014. Again, a ceasefire was brokered by Egypt. Then there was exchange of prisoners, and in that case, around about 2,200, I think more than 2,200 Palestinians were killed, and around 73 Israelis as well. But then violence erupted. Then Mahmoud Abbas came to power in 2015, President Mahmoud Abbas. Then he announced that Palestinians would no longer be bound to the territorial divisions created by Oslo Accords. So in 2018, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, they again conducted demonstrations at the border between the Gaza Strip and Israel, because Israel built the wall at the Gaza Strip after 2005. Then this all started happening, and the fighting going on between Israelis and Palestinians after the creation of the state of Israel, and still it is going on. And Israel is occupying the Palestinian land, the Palestinian territory, one after the other. They are capturing the cities. So, according to the United Nations, what UN says, last time they stormed, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they Israelis do this. They did this, and I'm sure that they will do this in the future as well. That they stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque to raise and to hurt the emotions of Muslims, and specifically to hurt the emotions of the Palestinians. So what international community do, as Chairman IHRC said, rightly said, that they just stand in solidarity with Palestinians, that whatever is going on is wrong. And we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian just by words. But practically nobody is speaking or taking the practical measures for the Palestinian people. Then what happened in 2018, the Trump administration, they canceled the funding for the UN Relief and Work Agency, that provide aid to Palestinian refugees, and relocated the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel, and Jerusalem is, according to us, Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. And a reversal of a long-standing, US policy. So that policy changed after, when Trump came to power. So this was the shift of decision made by the great power, especially by the US, because US supported Israel a lot, either in the form of, military support or economic support, or maybe in other spheres as well. So US supported Israel. Then in 2020, United Arab Emirates, our brothers, Islamic country, Bahrain, Middle Eastern country, member of OIC, member of Gulf Cooperation Council. What they did, they agreed to normalize their relations with Israel, making them only the third and the fourth countries in the region, following the, Egypt. Egypt, I think, established its relations in 79, if I'm not wrong. Then Jordan in 94, and then in these Middle Eastern countries, they're also accepting and they are normalizing their relations with Israel. So this, there are many accords, there are many resolutions of General Assembly, there are human rights violations going on. But what really, happens is that Israel is not only strengthening and becoming a powerful country, but, they are capturing the cities, the territory of Palestine, and this thing is going on from last many years. And I can't see any practical measures by any Islamic country if anyone mind this thing. But this is the reality. What we are doing, what Pakistan is doing, what Turkey is doing, what the Arab countries are doing. We just stand in solidarity with Palestinians, that we are standing with them, and Al-Quds is in our hearts. Then what is this? practically we are not doing anything, and we just simply say we stand in solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and we will do this and that. But where is OIC? So these are some of the major or main concerns for Muslim Ummah. When we call it Muslim Ummah, so where is that Muslim Ummah? Where is OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation? Where is GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council? And Pakistan is also not only one of the powerful Muslim country, but a nuclear power as well. But what are the practical measures taken by the Islamic countries and specifically by Pakistan? Unfortunately, we haven't taken the practical and positive steps towards the Arab-Israel conflict, or maybe Palestinian-Israeli conflict. We just simply speak that we stand in solidarity with Palestinians. We are with them just by words. But practically, I mean, I haven't seen any kind of support, unfortunately, by, that you can say a strong support towards Palestinians, and against the, you can say, Israel. So this is what I wanted to discuss. There are many concerns as well, and if you want me to speak, I have so many other concerns as well, especially after the recent developments that are going on in Israel and in Palestine, and a few of the actions that are taken by the Arab governments, the Arab countries. So this is also a concern for us. I mean, if we know that we are unable to resolve this conflict, okay, then there is one thing: either you have to start, and normalize your relations with Israel, like UAE and other Gulf countries are doing. They are normalizing their relations because they know they can't do anything. Either they have to establish their relations or they don't. We have seen recently that Turkey is even normalizing its relations with Israel. UAE, Bahrain, other Arab countries, they want to normalize their relations with Israel. So if all these countries are going to establish or normalizing their relations, where Pakistan stands? This is especially my concern, that where Pakistan stands. Do we really think that Pakistan is that country alone who can support Palestine? I think for us, we are interdependent economic situations and other pressures on the government of Pakistan and all these things. I mean, if we see all these circumstances, it is extremely difficult for Pakistani policymakers, for Pakistani government, to practically, I mean, not by words, to practically support Palestinians. So this really, raises a question for our solidarity, our support, Al-Quds, our love for Al-Quds, and all these kind of things, because uh, things are, as Excellency Shahid Amin Khan said, that things are deteriorating, things are changing. And we don't know, after 10 years, do you really think that there will be a Palestine after 20 years, 30 years? If I would suggest you to just go and check out the map of the Palestine, what it was in 1947 and what it is right now. So you will clearly see a difference, that how Israel is capturing the Palestinian land, and what will be the situation after 20 years, after 50 years. You can't imagine. So who will take the positive step? And if, unfortunately, if we are unable to take the positive steps, then we have to step back. We have no right to raise our voice. We have no right to stand in solidarity if we are unable to take the practical measures. Why to just simply say we are standing in solidarity with Palestine, and Israelis are capturing their territories, their lands? So where is our support? This is the question. Where is the support from the Arab world? Where is the support from Turkey? Where is the support from Pakistan? What we are doing? So this really raises a question in the minds of all of us. Although I go very far, but I mean, this is unfortunately the reality of today's world. We talk about Muslim Ummah, we talk about Islamic cooperation, we talk about that we are 57 Islamic countries. But even we are 57 Islamic countries, but unfortunately, we miserably failed to provide peace and stability in the world. We are unable to support Palestine, to support Kashmir, as well as apart from leave other conflicts. We are unable to even resolve the issue of Palestine and Kashmir. So if we are unable to do this, I think the voices we raise are just slogans. That's it. There is no such reality. This is by the way my personal opinion. Don't take it personally. I am not against any government. I am not against any Arab country. They are very close to me, and especially Turkey is having a special importance. But the point related to the Israeli-Palestine conflict is when we talk about this conflict, we are having a major, a vast difference among the people. Arab countries think differently. Turkish people are thinking differently. And we, the people of subcontinent, people of Pakistan and Bangladesh, they have their own opinion about this conflict and they take it very seriously. And still, Pakistan is one of the Islamic countries that not only, they do not recognize Israel, they do not establish diplomatic relations. I mean, totally, there is no such thing with any kind of relations with Israel. And Pakistan is one of the countries, those who are not recognizing Israel. Now, recently, UAE and other Arab countries are recognizing them. And I don't know that in upcoming countries, maybe few of the Arab countries are left. I will not, announce their names due to some reasons, but I know that in upcoming few years, few of our close brotherly Islamic countries will recognize Israel. And where Pakistan stands, this is a question for Pakistanis and for Pakistani policymakers. And if we talk about people, lastly, I'll just conclude in few minutes that if we talk about the people, so people, yes, people have power, but it differs from country to country. Pakistani people are very sincere with Palestinians, with people of Kashmir. The people of Bangladesh, they are very sincere, and they stand in solidarity and they raise their voice. Even though the Arab countries, their people are very sincere. The Turkish people, they still believe that there will be a peaceful resolution and this occupation will end. I'm not talking about people, but where governments stand, what the governments of the Islamic countries are doing. This is, I think, a question for all of us, for our policymakers, and for our governments, for our political parties, that if you are unable to resolve the issues, then don't raise your voice for the oppressed people because it is just a slogan, not not a practical work. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. I think if we have any questions, so we can take it.
First of all, you briefly elaborated the situation, Musawwar. But let me tell you one thing that the diplomatic ties and the sentiments of a people are two different things in the international world and international community, and especially in the governance. If I'm not wrong, out of 57 countries, there are a few countries, Muslim states left, including Pakistan, those who didn't recognize Israel. Otherwise, the majority of the Muslim states recognizing the Israel, it is their successes on the governmental level. Uh, the few states, those who are not recognizing Israel, it's not a fundamental of policy of that countries. It is just because of the sentiments of the peoples, because they are not willing for any revolt against them. So that is the only reason that those countries are not recognizing Israel. If my Turkey was the one who recognized Israel in after the 67 war. Azerbaijan, they recognized the Israel, they have the diplomatic ties, uh, and so on. There are many those who having an hidden ties with Israel. If I am not wrong, I am also witness that the Pakistan is also having talks with the Israel in the backdoor diplomacy and officially in backdoor diplomacy officially they they have they developed the talks between Israel and Pakistan. So it's obvious every country to country the policy shift and policy is something else. So recognizing Israel is not a matter, it's not an importance in front of me, frankly, if I am not wrong. Uh, if we recognize Israel, we will open the doors of negotiation. This is what I means to say. You know, you cannot, when you shut your doors, that how possible you can put a pressure, where you can put a pressure and negotiate. This is the one scenario what the other Muslim countries are saying, that how to talk with Israel when we have no relationship. So this is the one of their own opinion. And the other opinion is that we have no talks with Israel until unless there is no independent Palestinian state. So this is the other version of a relationship. So what I means to say that the 12 or 13 or 15 or 16 countries cannot put the pressure on the international community that the Palestine there should be a free and independent Palestine state. Obviously correct, because the majority of the Muslim Ummah states are already accepting, recognizing, normalizing the relationship with the state of Israel. So what it makes difference? It makes difference that the peoples of Palestine are becoming the wiseless, because when you develop the diplomatic relation, you also develop the economic relation. Today, words is not a word of a wars. It is a word of a economic ties with each other. You know why the why the Kashmiris are not successful for the right of self-determination? Because I always says that the 1.5 billion or almost 2 billion market, how the international community can afford to left that economy for the 10 crores people of Palestine, sorry, Kashmir, and for the 300 million people of Pakistan. So, I mean, we have to be very pragmatic, and obviously we should be optimistic, but pragmatic, and we should talks in a sensibility with the existing environment. So existing environment is saying the trade. So, do the Palestine and as a free state will be having a much trade than the Israeli is giving to the international community? I must say no. Uh, will the Kashmiris will give them the trade uh, in relation after getting the freedom instead of India? I will say no. So how this question will be resolved? So the coming to an end on this era, that whether you have the diplomatic relation or not, everything will be deal, everything will be considered on the economic markets, viability of a trade, and economic interest. So where is the fight is now today? Why the Americans are opposing and Western are opposing China? Because China grabbed most of the world economies and markets. So on, why the Russia and the America is intervening into the Ukraine and Russia war, because that war will collapse the European Union. European Union are depending on the oil and gas of the Russia. So the pop-up things in Ukraine is the main thing that Russia is not going to give up, and that will be ultimately collapse of the European Union if they will not go on alternative. So today, why the Pakistan is suffering from the oil and gas, cheaper oil and gas? Because the Arab worlds are selling oil and gas to the European Union on the highest price. So the markets goes up. So this is the all war is a war of economy, war of the interest, and war of the trade. So this phenomena we have to keep in mind, that all conflicts at this moment, whatever the conflicts are, they are not worthy. They are not worthy in front of the economic interest of the Western powers and the international community and the big powers, obviously. So they always come to an end. Okay, just issue the condemnation and do nothing. So Pakistan is doing the same thing as well. So we cannot blame each other. We cannot blame the governments. But because it is an international phenomena, that now we have to fight in economy and trade, not into the weaponized industry. So the conflict will be remain.
Thank you.
This is the reality of a time. So one question.
Yes, we have questions in the chat box. We have a question from Mukarrab Kabir, and he wanted to ask that, do you think previously weak Pakistan militarily, politically, and now economically and politically is one of the major reasons of not solving Kashmir and Palestine issue? And also Kashmir and Palestine issues are interlinked.
On the one hand, I will say the Pakistan can win into the Kashmir, but if Pakistan focused, Pakistan is having an unfocused leadership and unfocused peoples, unserious peoples who are dealing the Kashmir issue, whether in the foreign affairs or whether in the military establishment or whether into the political establishment. Pakistan is a nuclear state, and a nuclear war between the regional two countries can pose a very big threat for the whole international community. But I think Pakistan is not playing their own cards to resolve the Kashmir issue. I don't know what is behind it, but I must say that Pakistan is having the capability to force the international community over the Kashmir issue, but they are, I don't know for what they are waiting. I will say that Christina Lamb has wrote one book which says waiting for Allah. So the Kashmiris and Pakistanis are on the same extent waiting for the Allah and nothing more. Interlinked to the Kashmir and Palestine issues, no, there is no interlink strategy between the Kashmir and Palestine. Kashmir is a different question and Palestine is a different question. Because if you will see that the half of Kashmir is liberated from occupied forces of India, and that is from the 1947 to till now. I mean, the Kashmiris, they liberated themselves from 1947 to onward, and that is called the Azad state of Jammu and Kashmir. But there is no Azad state of Palestine into that territory. That is even, I mean, economically, diplomatically, even for surviving, there is no survival into the Palestine. They are fully dependent on the state of Israel. But here, Palestine, the Kashmiris are not fully dependent on the state of India. because the half part is liberated and the half part is unoppressed. And there is a question of a plebiscite. And in Palestine, there is no question of a plebiscite. That is decided question that this land belongs to the two nations, and ultimately they will become the two independent state. The Palestine is a territorial dispute. Kashmir is not a territorial dispute. It is a matter of a right of a self-determination. Palestine is not a matter of a rights of a self-determination. That is a territorial dispute between the Israel and Palestine. And Kashmir is not a territorial dispute between the Pakistan and India. The Kashmiris have their own will according to the international community, accepted by the both actors in the Kashmir. In the question of Kashmir, Pakistan and India, which they accepted widely that yes, this right belongs to the people of Kashmir and they will decide wherever they want to go. So it is not a territorial dispute. So we always do mistakes interlinking the question, the two different question and one question. Time is a different question. And with the acceptance of the international community and with the acceptance of the parties of concern. So I should say this on this question. There is one question of Mr. Tior Mathuakar. Other intifada is possible in the
Sir,
other intifada is
he wants to relate the Palestine issue with Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine war.
yes. Let me tell you one thing, that the Ukraine question is a survival of the related to the survival of the European Union. For that reason, the Europe and America joined hands to secure the future of the European Union. It's not a war. I think if the Europe will say, okay, we have nothing to do with Ukraine, then I think within a 1 minute this war will be ending. But it is the matter that if once Ukraine falls, then many of the Western countries and Balkan countries will fall on the same situation, and the NATO interest, NATO countries' interest will be shrink. So they are fighting for their power. It's nothing to do with the Intifada like movement. But when we are talking about the Palestine peoples are left on the mercy of Allah, on the mercy of God, because 57 brotherly countries, they are not behind with them. Who is behind with them to fight and to support that intifada? Intifada is either the people. It is intifada called the people's struggle and people movement to fight for their right. So the Palestinians are left alone in front of that country. Those possessed all dangerous weapons, which even the most of the world countries don't have it. So, do you think that in intifada like a Ukraine war, where the almost 49 countries are supporting one country, and here the people of Palestine will alone will fight with the daggers, with the swords, and with the old-fashioned weapons or some sort of self-developed rockets? No, it's not. It's not possible. There is one more question by Kurratulain. It is the era of the economic independence. States' interest is much more important that it's an era of economic fights, economic markets grabbing. It's related to the trade, investments, and everybody is fighting for it. Every country is fighting for their interest, economic trade, finding the markets, and finding the prosperity for themselves. Obviously, the world again and again going through the recession due to the few conflicts, but it is very clear that there is no other option. There is every question linked to the economy and the state decisions on economy and trade.
Thank you very much, Excellency. You had answered all the questions asked by our participants. I would like to lastly ask if anyone else would like to ask any question or would like to add anything, because today is the last session of our program, BINA certificate program. So if you can add anything or you can ask, so you are free to ask, because today we are ending up our program with
I think
Osram.
I think Musawwar, I have I have to go because I am already scheduled for going. So if you will allow me, permit me, so I'm having a meeting, but I put your time to me. Thank you, Orsam, and thank you, Youth Diplomacy Forum, together organizing this interactive dialogues and talks on the issue of Palestine. We all accordingly are supporting the young generation for raising the big question of the world, and they are very much aware, not like us when we were students. So God bless you all. God bless the pupils, and thank you very much for having with you.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank you
Mr.
very much for.
Ambassador, for the outstanding speech that you have portrayed for us for today as an ending session also.
Thank you. God bless you all.
For the Palestinian issue. Well, Mr. Musawar, I would also like to give the floor to thank you also for intensively cooperating with us with the Center for Middle Eastern Studies. It was a very good program that we have portrayed for the past month. We have learned so much about Pakistan and their view about the Middle East, and hopefully that we could help about viewing the Middle East in a better shape. I would also like to thank all of our participants, for their patience. Although we had a lot of problems, despite the technical problems and the problems with the range of the professors and experts, but it was all flawlessly. Well, I hope the best for all you too.
Thank you very much.
Well, I guess that's the end of it, Mr. Musawar.
Yes, sure. We can end up our session, because questions are already discussed, and we have discussed already in a very detail about the Palestinian issue. So we can end up our session, please.
Okay. Thank you very much once again.